All right, we've talked about making sure that the alcohol, once it's been distilled, is run through carbon, and this is really quite important. We've got to make sure that the alcohol is as clean as possible and we're taking out as many impurities as we can. Now, the Spiritworks filter I think is fantastic because it really does do the job, and it uses loosely bound granular carbon rather than the preconceived blocks, which are obviously a lot more convenient, but I actually don't think they do as good a job as the granular carbon. So if we look to see what we've got, basically we've got a tube here, just as you can see it's almost a metre in length. We've got an arrow at the top just to indicate it is the top of the tube, and obviously at the bottom we haven't got an arrow at all. So on the tube, what we have at the top, I'm just unscrewing it, is a washer or a nipple that sits in the top there, and we then have a flat washer with lots of little holes in, which is preset in there, and it's all pre-cut so it fits really nicely. And then on top of that we put the actual neoprene washer for sealing. So that will then screw on the top. On the bottom of the tube, slightly different to the top, we have a similar setup where we've got the same nipple that's coming through the screw. We now have a mesh filter, a stainless steel mesh filter. Now this is to stop any of the finely ground granular carbon dropping through and into our brew. And then we have a final neoprene washer again, which holds in place. So that screws on at the bottom, like so. And that will remain in place there. We've no need to take that off now. That's all good, and that's perfect to work for us. So what I'm going to do now is I've got one here which is all ready to go. As you can see, there's nothing in the column. We've got the bottom in place with the mesh filter, and I'm now just going to fill this full of carbon. And the easiest way I do it is make sure you cut on the bag of carbon just a small section, just enough so that when you put your hand around the top you can just let the carbon drop in, and it's going to keep going in and it's going to fill up the tube. Alright, we've got a bit of puffy smoke coming out, which is obviously the carbon. And we're just topping this up until it's absolutely full. There we go. You can tell it's full because it's just overlapping. And then if we just tap it like so, that will get rid of the loose bits. So we've now got the carbon in there. One thing that I would point out is we need to make sure that there's absolutely no carbon at all on the threads. If there's anything on the threads, then that can stop it sealing and the alcohol will leak through. So it's really, really important to make sure there's absolutely no carbon at all on there. And all we're going to do now is put the top section on into place as well, like so. Now what we can do with this, without this on, we can take this to a tap with a hose pipe on, and we can push it onto the end of a hose pipe and get the water to run through it. So all we're going to do, we've got a hose pipe here, there's nothing special on the end. That is just going to go into place there over the end, and we're going to turn it on, and we should see some water coming through the end. Really black to start with, because obviously the carbon. And we're just going to run that for 2 or 3 minutes just to make sure the carbon is activated and it's lovely and clean. So I'll come back to you shortly. Now we've activated the carbon, we can now get it into position and get it ready to run. There's a hole in the lid at the bottom, so I'm just going to push that into place, and we've got a length of tubing. Now what we can do is we can cut this length of tubing so it fits exactly, or we can actually just get something underneath it to raise it, because we want to try and get the maximum height we can to actually get the maximum benefit. So all I'm going to do is put that into place now. That's in position. The tap is in the off position. We've got it so it's absolutely right angles to the floor. I don't want it leaning, I want it absolutely straight. And we're just going to turn the tap on now, release the lid slightly to let the pressure flow, and as you can see, the alcohol is now starting to come through. Now that carbon cartridge should do about 10 litres. So if you've got a wash that you've done and you've distilled it, you've got 4, say, ish litres of 90 odd %, you're going to dilute that down to 40% with water. That will all fit in this bucket and will run through. You can see the bag is 1 kilo. You're going to get about 5 to 6 lots through that bag. So it's incredibly efficient as well. Now what I always do with my alcohol, I'm a bit of a pain really, because I really like it to taste good. I'll run it through once. I normally start say 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I finished roughly 6 hours, finished around 9 o'clock. I'll then take the bottom bucket, put it back into the top bucket, and I'll run it through the same carbon cartridge. So each lot of alcohol I have gets run through that carbon cartridge twice. Now, if you want to improve it again, strip out the carbon, refill the carbon, and repeat it twice more. If you do 4 lots, you'll end up with a lovely, lovely clean alcohol. I find after 2, mine's perfect. I don't need to do 4, but some people will think that it will benefit, and that's good for them. So that will work for them. But as I say, it's incredibly economical and it's incredibly easy to do. One thing that we ought to mention as well is that that carbon cartridge should only be used once. Don't leave it between uses. If you leave it between uses and your carbon dries out, you're going to end up with problems, and it won't take out what you're looking for. There are other people who will say you can dry the carbon. I have to say it's costing us just over £1 to fill that tube with carbon. Is it really worth risking it for your quality alcohol? No. So just make sure it doesn't dry. Make sure you only use it for 1 lot. Okay, you can put it through twice, but don't keep using loads of alcohol and keep putting it through the same carbon. Keep refreshing it. It's not crown jewels. Now, what I would also say is that if anybody has an air still and they want to upgrade to this particular system, it will save them a lot of hassle in terms of the filtration. So with an air still, what you would do is you would run all 6 lots through in one go. So all 6, repeat, 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 collecting 800 mils, diluting down to 1.2. You're going to end up with 6 times 1.2, which is 7.2 litres at 40%. Into your top bucket, run it through and collect it into the bottom bucket. So all of it will be done in one go. And that way, for your air still producer, you will end up with a better quality alcohol, because this system is much better than the small little polo type cartridge that we use on the air still. This will give you a much better result, but it's going to cost you slightly more. And the other real bonus is, with the air still, we get so many people who want to upgrade from an air still to a T500. You've already got the filtration system ready for when you do that upgrade, so everybody's a winner.